I suppose in simple terms, it's like thinking there hasn't been a murder. A jury has decided there hasn't been a murder, but someone is still dead. Did something else go wrong that someone should be held accountable for?
Yeah. It was exclusive. We learn Martyn Blake, the armed officer who shot Chris Kaba, could still face gross misconduct charges and the possibility of being sacked. And that, of course, is despite being found not guilty of murder at the Old Bailey yesterday. Today, for the first time, we've been able to reveal that Kabba was a key member of one of London's most dangerous gangs. He was accused of being involved in 2 shootings in the days before he was killed. We can now talk to Fiona Hamilton, chief reporter at The Times, who has this story and is on the line. Hello to you, Fiona.
Hi, John.
Fiona, so look, fascinating story you have unearthed here. Martyn Blake, he is, well, could face gross misconduct accusations despite that acquittal. Do tell us more.
Yes, that's right. So there's a separate process for police gross misconduct hearings to the criminal proceedings. So when the Independent Office for Police Conduct completed their fatal shooting investigation last year, they obviously decided that there was enough for a murder file to be sent to the prosecution service, which subsequently started those criminal proceedings in which he was acquitted yesterday. But at the very same time, they also decided, and it's a different test and a different threshold, that he should be, regardless of criminal proceedings outcome, that he should be referred for gross misconduct proceedings. Now, interestingly, I've learned that at that point, it's a legal requirement. The Met were asked for their view, and at that point, the Director of Professional Standards agreed that Blake should be charged with gross misconduct. Now, the process is reviewed at this point to see if there is anything material from the murder trial, any new evidence, any witness evidence, anything at all that might sway the IOPC's view. And the Met is allowed to give a fresh view. It's my understanding, and of course the Commissioner was very robust on this publicly yesterday. Yes. It sounds like there's been a change of feeling there, and that they believe a gross misconduct proceeding should not happen. I suspect that the IOPC will want to forge forward with one, though.
Right, fascinating story, Fiona, and thanks to you for unearthing this. I'm left with the confusion at hearing Mark Rowley yesterday about something like this time, sounding so supportive of the bravery of the officers who stopped Kabba in London, and then learning that the Metropolitan Police had already supported these internal charges. I don't see how that adds up.
Well, it is quite interesting, isn't it? And I think it will add to concerns from firearms officers who we have spoken to, who say that they don't get enough support from senior officers. The Met's position on this is effectively that the situation has changed. So this was their view in March 2023, when the IOPC had completed its investigation. It was not until September last year that charges were approved. And of course, the trial's been going on for the past few weeks. So they are now saying that the evidence has been tested in front of a jury, and there's been a clear conclusion made by that jury. The only thing I would say to that is that, of course, probably in early 2023, much of the evidence that was put before the trial was known at that point.
Yes.
There was probably mood music about what the CPS were going to do. So it is an interesting change of position, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are going to be some in the police service in the Met who are not very happy about the way this has played out at all. In the eyes of the Independent Police Conduct Office, Fiona, what is it about what happened that constituted gross misconduct?
Well, essentially, I mean, if I explain it in terms of how you get to a murder charge in the first place, it's any police use of force has to be tested. It has to be proportionate and reasonable, and the officer has to hold an honestly held belief that force was necessary. So for the IOPC to send this to the CPS and for the CPS to approve charges in the first place, yes, there was a case from them that those requirements were not met. Now, the jury has indeed decided that they were met because they acquitted Mr. Blake. But the test for a gross misconduct case is lower. So the test is there that you may have had that honestly held belief that you needed to shoot in order to save lives, that lives were in danger, but was the belief reasonable? And because that's a lower threshold, that's why they would be arguing that there is a case for gross misconduct. I suppose in simple terms, it's like thinking there hasn't been a murder. A jury has decided there hasn't been a murder, but someone is still dead, did something else go wrong that someone should be held accountable for?
Yeah, well, it does sound as if the police high command have done something of a U-turn in the light of the jury's decision on a question of principle, even though the facts remain the same. I mean, how will this?
Also,
Yes, Fiona.
oh, sorry to interrupt. I was only going to say it's a really controversial issue because, of course, in March 2023, there hadn't been a revolt of firearms officers. If you remember, it was in September when charges against Mr. Blake were laid by the CPS that dozens of firearms officers handed in their weapons and they said, we're not prepared to go on duty. And the army was briefly put on standby because of concerns about the protection of Londoners. So there is a lot else going on here beyond this single case. And a real... The commissioner, I dare say, is feeling a lot of pressure from those officers about support.
Yeah, well, the position of the leadership of the Met cannot be called consistent, whatever else you call it. And now, what about the reaction, Fiona, of this officer's colleagues? Will they be taking a dim view of the way this has played out?
Yes, I think there's going to be a lot more debate about this. As I say, we've spoken to firearms sources who say that they get the odd token gesture from top brass, that they might get a supportive statement, but actually they don't get enough by way of real support in terms of the difficult, fast-paced and dangerous job that they're doing. The Labour government is being asked to look at a range of proposals that Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Commissioner, has put forward to not only give greater protection to firearms officers and officers who use force, but also to speed up the processes when they're investigated and perhaps make it more difficult to bring prosecutions against them. So he absolutely has been pushing for that. Some of it was approved by the Tory government, but not as much as the Met wanted. So I think that this is going to be an ongoing issue.
So, and when we say more protection, does that mean, maybe among other things, though, a presumption that an officer in this sort of situation making a second decision is acting in good faith?
Yes, actually, one of the policies that they want to see looked at is whether officers, when they follow their training, should be exempt from prosecution. But I think it opens up a whole load of other questions about use of police force and would be quite controversial.
I'm sure it will. Fiona Hamilton, lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much. And again, thanks for your story.